Presented by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. It's good to be blue.
All right, we'll have David Johnson here in a minute. Ole Miss 247 site. David Johnson, Ole Miss Insider. Coming up next, SEC Insider Hit this morning, brought to you by RPT and Rick's Pro Truck. Number one Jeep truck accessory stores in Mississippi, RPT. Spray and bed liners, lift kits. New location, Gluckstadt, Madison County. We're going to discuss the Ole Miss QB battle with David Johnson, Rebels 247, on the Parish Brewing guest line. As we're a little less than 3 weeks away from Ole Miss hosting the Florida Gators and Dan Mullen. That's some tasty storylines there. You're listening to WRKS ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We welcome in Ole Miss Insider David Johnson to the show. David, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Bo. I'm good, man. How are you?
Oh, well, I'm doing well. We're glad to have you back on the show.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm here to do that, man.
Well, let's I can't believe it. We're finally under 3 weeks away. We had a bunch of football over the weekend, high school and college, so that's exciting. And more of it this weekend along with the NFL. Tell me where Ole Miss is right now with the Matt Corral, John Rice Plumlee, and maybe even another guy quarterback battle. David?
Yeah, we're having to keep our ear very close to the ground. Obviously, this is not a normal situation for us as, we're not allowed to attend practices because of the COVID situation. But everything we're hearing leaking out of the Manning Center, really and truly for the last couple of weeks, has been that Matt Corral has kind of separated himself. And maybe ever so slightly, but the word, the consistent word is that Matt Corral is kind of leading that battle right now. However, when you dig a little bit deeper, you find that these two guys are still splitting first-team reps pretty much equally. So I don't think anything has ultimately been decided, but I do think Matt Corral is the guy you'd put your money on at this point of the competition. And, we're just going to have to wait and see because Lane Kiffin's not going to tip Dan Mullen and Florida off to who he's going to play any sooner than he has to. And, there's always that scenario where I don't think they want this to happen, but they could roll out two different quarterbacks and really and truly kind of two different offenses that you've got to be prepared for when you talk about the diversity of skill sets between Corral and John Rice Plumlee, who we all know can run like lightning. So, it's again, if I had to put money on it, I'd put the money on Matt Corral at this point. But, I learned last year you never count out a guy like John Rice Plumlee. We'll see what happens. But it is probably the most intriguing storyline of the entire preseason practice for the Rebels.
All right. So do you expect you expect John Rice to play a lot this year too, or no?
I think no pun intended, but you have a rebellion in Oxford if John Rice Plumlee is not on that field a whole lot in some capacity. The guy basically saved the Ole Miss offense last year. Corral started the first 4 games. They really never could get it going. He has the unfortune of suffering an injury, misses a couple of weeks, and John Rice Plumlee never relinquished his role until the final drive of the Egg Bowl last year. And, Corral led Ole Miss down the field, and we all know what happened after that. But, he's got to be on the field somewhere. He's one of the most dynamic, electrifying athletes you have on the roster. And I don't think it'd only be a local outcry. I think it'd be a national outcry if John Rice Plumlee was reduced to wearing a costume on Saturday afternoons. The kid's going to be somewhere on that field.
All right. So David Johnson, Ole Miss Insider, 247 Sports, joins us on the Parish Brewing guest line. Matt Corral is the leader in the clubhouse. Let me follow up with that. With it, this is almost like a redshirt year for Kiffin and other first-year coaches, I think, Leach and Pittman and others, because of the pandemic and everything. With having said, and it's a modified schedule and so on. So having said that, do you think that Kiffin would be that he's okay with playing two quarterbacks more than he normally would be, David?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've heard this termed, and that was a good way of putting it, a red shirt year for the first-year coach. I've heard people talk about this as, a throwaway season. Maybe you go to a bowl game with 4 wins this year, things like that. All the kids are going to be granted an extra year of eligibility. So in some regards, I think it's right to classify it as that. There's not a lot of pressure on any of these first-year guys this year. Ole Miss needs to win for recruiting sake. They need to show that they're turning a corner. They need to show it as soon as possible. But I think you're right in a lot of regards, and I think sure you would tend to do more of that this year. Maybe you use the whole year to figure out who's going to be your starter next year.
Right.
I think he's got he's playing with house money in that regard.
Sure. David Johnson on the Out of Bounds show. And so John Rice Plumlee was hurt over the weekend. Maybe he tweaked a hamstring and he wasn't able to play in the third scrimmage, David?
Yeah, kind of described as just banged up. He did not participate in the scrimmage on Saturday. And there's a battle going on, but behind Corral and Plumlee as well, as to which one of those 3 guys would be the third string guy, because in this wacky year we're about to have, and you never know. I mean, you may test on a Friday and neither one of your top 2 quarterbacks are ready to go, and Jackson area native Kincaid Dent took most of the second team reps in Plumlee's absence on Saturday. So, that's kind of an indicator that it may be Dent ahead of Grant Tisdale for that number 3 spot at this point.
Wow. Okay. That is interesting. Did you hear when John Rice is expected back, or is it just a day-to-day?
Yeah, I think it's day-to-day. I don't think it's anything serious. I'll actually talk to Lane Kiffin this morning, and that'll certainly be a question that he'll be asked, and we should have a little bit more on that later today. Has
Mingo stepped up as the number 2 without a doubt behind Elijah Moore, or is that still a battle?
No, I'm so glad you asked that question. I think Mingo's their top edge receiver. Of course, Moore is going to line up in the slot most of the time, but he's had an unbelievable camp. And just with talking to Jonathan, I spoke with him last week, you can sense the level of maturity that he has gained since he's been in a college football program for a year. He kind of has that stare about him where you realize he's on a mission right now. He knows he could have performed better last year, needed to get a little bit more experience under his belt. He's got all the physical tools. And if he has got everything together like I think he does at this point, I think Jonathan Mingo is a candidate to have the biggest breakout year for any Ole Miss Rebel this fall.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Moore and Mingo, they'll be leading the way. Who are you hearing as the third guy?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you really haven't heard a name emerge as that third guy at this point. If I had to put money on that one, I would go with Braylon Sanders. Braylon has flashed at times during his career, and I would think he probably has the inside track to being the third receiver. But you've got guys like Dontario Drummond that are in there battling. The 2 Jacksons and Jaden and Dennis Jackson are in there battling. Miles Battle. They have a lot of receivers and a lot of talent in that receiving room. Those guys just have to get a little bit more giddy up and get rid of the case of the drops that plagued most of them last season.
And, okay, so let's go to running back. Do you expect Kiffin to throw the ball to them a good bit, or?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think Jerrion Ely, talking to him a few weeks ago, he doesn't even describe himself as a running back. He describes himself as an offensive weapon, a playmaker. I think they're going to be extremely creative in how they use Jerrion Ely. I think Snoop Connor, is going to get his fair share of carries as well in this offense. And then the true freshman, Henry Parish, has shined brightly throughout fall camp. And I think they feel really, really good about where they are with their running back situation. Are they going to run it 63% of the time like they did last year? I doubt that with Lane Kiffin and Jeff Levy calling the shots. But you got to put the ball in the hands of those horses because, they're already proven commodities and only sophomores.
David Johnson on the Out of Bounds show, Ole Miss Insider 247 Sports, and talking as Ole Miss gets ready to play Florida and Dan Mullen, which will be wild. Mullen will be coming back to vault Hemingway, but he'll be wearing orange and blue instead of.
Will he be wearing shorts, Bo? Will he wear shorts in his first one? Is it too late in September to do that?
I think it's too late. It's too late in September to do that.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, that is a difficult season opener for Ole Miss. Everybody in the SEC has a difficult opener this year, though, with the way the schedule sets up. But you're going to find out a lot about the Ole Miss Rebels on September 26th. That much is for sure. Florida's talented on both sides of the ball. They're obviously very well coached. And, Lane Kiffin's going to get baptized his second trip through the SEC as a head coach by fire on September 26th. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Brutal openers for the Rebs and the Dogs.
No doubt.
David, when Mississippi State was recruiting your son Eli, did you ever have any communication with Dan?
Oh yeah, man. I tell you, it's a great story. So Deshae Townsend had sent word, and of course Eli was in ninth grade at that time, that he'd like for Eli to come down and catch a spring practice. And so Eli gingerly comes in there and asks me, "Hey, Dad, can we go down to Mississippi State on Saturday?" And he explained to me that Coach Townsend had sent word that he wanted him down there. So I said, sure. So my wife and I drove Eli down there. He was too young to drive. He was 14. And we dropped him off, went inside, met everybody but Coach Mullen. And then we left to go uptown. We're going downtown Starkville to have lunch, and we'd come pick him back up later. Before we got off campus, Eli called and said, hey, Coach Mullen wants to see y'all. So we turned around and went back to the building and walked down the long corridor to Dan's office and spent an hour in there with him. And I liked Dan Mullen ever since that day, to be honest with you. They were Mississippi State recruited my son very, very well. They always treated us well. And it would be 6 months later before Ole Miss would offer him. And we spent a lot of time down at Mississippi State in that interim. And even after the fact, Eli would go down there. But Dan did a heck of a job recruiting Eli. So did John Hevesy and Deshae Townsend at the time. And they were his first offer. Offered him, again, like I said, when he was 14. And, we'll always appreciate that as a family.
Man, that's a cool story. That is. Ole Miss Insider David Johnson, 247 Sports on the Parish Brewing guest line, giving us some insight as to what all's going on in Ole Miss fall camp. Matt Corral's the leader at the QB position, but John Rice will play. And we'll just see how much Kiffin decides to go with two quarterbacks for how long, or maybe at some point it's just one. Blake, you've got a question for David Johnson?
Yeah, David. You mentioned how we will learn not only about Ole Miss, but we'll learn a lot about every SEC school in the first Saturday. But you're going to learn a lot about Ole Miss, and part of that is Matt Corral. As somebody who watched every minute of every game last season for Ole Miss, and I know Kiffin's gone back and watched tape, but people always say, well, John Rice Plumlee is a gamer, right? That's the intangible word they use because he turns it on during the game. Is there something to be said about Corral shining in practice because the offense fits him, and John Rice, his abilities more show up in games because you don't really practice the way that he plays?
Blake, that is a fantastic question, and it's a good point to make as well, because this offense, I do believe, is certainly more tailored to Matt Corral's skill set. But unfortunately, we're not going to get an answer to that until we see some games. I think that is a valid point. But until there's a guy in an orange helmet chasing Matt Corral on September 26th, I don't think we can really truly answer that. I think Matt's grown up a little bit as well over the off season. He admitted to not doing some things that he needed to do last year to become a better quarterback. And, in a lot of ways, this is going to be a case study in psychology, I guess, as well. Let's see who made the biggest strides over the off season. Like I said, it's the biggest storyline in this fall camp by sure, and probably is not getting enough attention paid to it because there's not a whole lot being said about it when it comes to Lane Kiffin. Lane's very diplomatic in his answers, and I do think that's by design heading into this season opener where the Florida Gators are guessing what kind of offense they're going to be facing.
I love it. David Johnson, Ole Miss Insider on the Out of Bounds show. Is the offense – the offense is returning like 80% of the production from last year. Is the offense way ahead of the defense in camp?
Yes, 100%, no doubt about it. That's where you really get concerned with this Ole Miss team is on the defensive side of the football. They're thin. They're very thin on the defensive line. As a matter of fact, I'm fixing to put a story up on another one that went down yesterday, and this is the area of concern. They've got really good linebackers. I mean, I think they have top-tier SEC linebacker caliber talent on this roster. The problem is they're so thin in front of those linebackers and they're so thin behind those linebackers, and the linebackers can't do it all. And that kind of sums up this Ole Miss defense. The SEC guys, y'all know this. You need an 8-9 man rotation.
Oh yeah,
on the defensive line, and right now I can't see that on the Ole Miss roster.
And I don't remember if you wrote about it or Chuck wrote about it, but the Sam Williams stuff looks like that's dropped, and he should join the team any day now, David?
Well, there'll be a process, even once the legal process irons itself out, and we may hear something on that today. What we're hearing is things look very good, that this case may be dismissed. He'll have a process he'll have to go through with the university to be reinstated. And even when he gets back, I mean, I think you're pushing it right now to think Sam Williams is going to be ready by the Florida opener because he's been suspended from all team activity since the middle of July. So we'll just have to see how quickly they can reintegrate him into that defense once he's cleared. And, we'll see about that. We'll certainly report that as soon as we can on the Ole Miss Spirit.
All right, we'll leave it there. David Johnson, Ole Miss Insider with the Ole Miss Spirit on the Out of Bounds show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. David, it was great to catch up. Look forward to doing it throughout the season.
Okay, Bo, thank you for having me on as always.
See you, man. David Johnson.
Bye-bye.
On ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Matt Corral is going to start, unless something crazy happens. Matt Corral is going to start game 1 against Florida.
Yeah.
John Rice sat out the scrimmage over the weekend. Maybe it was a tweet hammy, maybe something else.
It's the most obvious outcome. I think we all talked about this all spring. And I know you've been on the John Rice Plumlee train. And look, it's not like he didn't play well last year. That's not what we're saying. But when it comes to an offseason with no real practice, an offense that is already tailored to one style over the other, and the fact that John Rice plays the position in a way that you can't really grasp the value of in practice.
Could be.
You don't see it that way. Corral can throw a bunch of pretty balls in practice, and Plumlee's balls may not look quite as nice when he throws them in practice, so Corral looks like the better quarterback. But as David said, you don't have orange helmets in your face, you don't have the pressure of the game, and you don't get to see John Rice's running ability in practice when you're not hitting and tackling the normal way. Now,
another topic to hit today, coming off of what David Johnson wrote on the Spirit, is listen to this. Best case scenario for Ole Miss financially this year is with the stadium capacity limited 25%, that they come out with losses in the $12 to $15 million range. If all fans are banned from attending games, the losses would soar to approximately $30 million.
So they can half their losses by getting 25% capacity. Interesting.
And then the doomsday scenario, the season, if it's canceled, losses would reach $60 million.
Because you stop getting those TV checks.
Right.
And Ole Miss is set to get their $9 million from the freeze probationary periods.
Or whatever it's in. Yeah. So I just wanted to give you those numbers.
So best case scenario is you're talking about losing $15 million.
Right.
I mean, grand scheme of things, 4 months ago we were talking about $100 million losses.
Right.
You know, that's what Wisconsin, Notre Dame, Ohio State, all them.
Utah furloughed all of their athletic department.
That's crazy.
Everybody.
Crazy.
So by the Pac-12 making this, political and I guess really not wanting to figure out a way to play.
Larry Scott needs to be held accountable for only doing what Kevin Warren and the Big Ten tells him to do. I mean, what is happening? The Pac-12 they've had every ample opportunity with the Big Ten putting their foot in their mouth to step back, reevaluate, and come back to the right side. And Larry Scott's basically like, well, what do you want me to do, Daddy? Like, I mean, what are we talking about here?
And I guess this all hinges on the Michigan president and governor.
Schwizzle.
But when they made the announcement last week that they're going to allow Michigan high school football, then Michigan fans and people were like, what in the hell are we doing?
Yeah, the Big Ten we talked about SMUing themselves, giving themselves the death penalty. I think not only that, but the public perception, if you're recruiting and you're not in the Pac-12 or the Big Ten, I mean, how easy is it to just slander every single school that is in? That's 24 schools I don't have to recruit against anymore because they ain't playing football.
And they're hoping that, they're already frustrated that college football is being played. I mean, you got to tip your hat to all these G5 teams.
Heck yeah.
Southern Miss, among others.
South Alabama.
Yeah.
Arkansas, even the FCS. Look, there are FCS schools who have their stuff together better than the Michigan, state of Michigan governor and presidents.
And they don't want it. They don't want the
SEC,
Big 12, or ACC to play.
Every weekend that we go into this and we come out of it.
The pettiness is at an all-time.
Well, it's not even pettiness anymore. It was pettiness. Now that it's a reality, it's job security.
That's true.
Every week that this goes on, the people who decided that they couldn't do it look worse and worse and worse. And they have no answer. They have they cannot give you anything as to why they made this decision.
And I don't think they voted on Friday because they didn't have the votes.
Nope.
They're only going to vote, it looks like to me, is if they have them.
Because they never voted in the beginning because this is a rigged decision.
Now, it'll be interesting to see if we get a vote today from the Big Ten or tomorrow. And they start the process of getting back into it and find, some dates to start and so on.
Kevin Warren might have the shortest tenure in Big Ten commissioner history.
If the SEC, ACC, and Big 12 play most of their games, not going to be good. Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone, is brought to you by Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. Ace Bolt and Screw, they now have a new retail location in Gluckstadt, Madison County, off Industrial Drive. Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools.